Minwei Chi Nan. Volume 2, Cannot Bear to Part from Each Other. Chapter 67. Henceforth, Celebrate the New Year Together. 3. LIAN's ears were dyed with a layer of light red as he spoke nonchalantly. It was written by somebody else. I just rewrote them when I saw that the words were nice. Inwardly, Mian felt that LIAN was both sweet and funny. He just thought that it was impossible for LIAN to write such romantic lines with his temperament. He was quite amused as he stared at LIAN's reddened ears. The man who was as cold as a blade edge would blush in embarrassment. The food is burning. LIAN pushed him to the kitchen. Mian looked at him with a smile before entering the kitchen. LIAN took out the red lanterns that he specially bought and hung them under the eaves of the courtyard gate. He went back to the central room and found scissors to cut wicks for 4 oil lamps. The room became brighter. Entering the kitchen, he looked at Mian's back, who was focused on cooking. He picked up the charcoal brazier and placed it under the dining table. He moved the charcoals with tongs to make the fire more vigorous. Help serve the dishes. Mian shouted, listening to the movement in the dining room. They arranged the dishes onto the table. The whole central room was filled with rich aroma of food. In the middle of the table was a hot pot cooked in a charcoal stove. Meatballs, fish balls, lotus root balls, and tofu dregs balls broiled among the thin slices of meat and the emerald green leaves. Around the hot pot, there were more than a dozen of dishes, such as roasted red spare ribs, perfectly clean tofu mixed with chopped shallot, auspicious chestnut stewed chicken, longevity fried noodles, surplus every year 2 braised carps, well-rounded braised pork balls in brown sauce, a haul of gold and jade corns, green peas, and diced carrots, crispy shrimps with tea leaves, sliced beef in hot chili oil, flavored duck, and marinated with soy sauce streaky pork with bright color and strong aroma, which could make anyone salivate. LIAN's eyes twinkled. His wife's cooking was like an inexhaustible treasure. There were surprises almost every day. Mian cut a large bowl of meat for Diane Bai. Then, he arranged the tableware, wine cups, and wine jar, and looked at LIAN inquisitively. Worship first. LIAN nodded. He brought the boiled pig's head in the kitchen to the altar, lit the thick incense joss sticks in 2 incense burners, knelt down and reached out to Mian. Wife, come here. Mian hesitated for a moment but still walked over and knelt down side by side with him. Since he could be reborn, who could say that there was no God in this world? He simply knelt and sought peace of mind. LIAN lightly stroked his head, lit a stack of yellow paper, took out 3 incense joss sticks, and kowtowed 3 times. In his heart, he silently worshipped gods and deceased ancestors, and then inserted the incense joss sticks on the pig's head. It was a simple but prudent sacrifice. They looked at each other, stood up and sat next to each other at the table. Let's eat. Mian picked up his chopsticks and greedily looked at the delicious food on the table. If you don't eat it now, it will get cold. LIAN picked up the wine jar and filled 2 cups with wine. He handed a cup to Mian and raised his cup with his eyes staring fixedly at Mian. His voice was flat and deep. Wife, how about celebrating the new year together henceforth? Mian's heart was pounding, making his action of clipping the food stopped. He looked at LIAN for a long time and his eyes flickered with the fluctuation of his feelings. He did not deny that he had taken this man to his heart and even relied on him in these short months of getting along almost day and night. For him, who thought that his sexual orientation was normal, it was unexpected but he thought that it was reasonable. LIAN was very tight-lipped and taciturn to the point that sometimes it made people anxious. But once he put a person in his heart, he treated that person so well it was hard for the person to resist. This kind of treatment was not merely intended to please but came naturally and involuntarily from his heart. It's hard not to get addicted to it. Since LIAN had protected him in front of Du Shi, roasted chicken drumsticks and corns for him, took him away from the old house, embraced him at night, and taught him martial arts and archery, his regards toward LIAN had grown day by day. There were several occasions when he felt that living with LIAN was more than just a good idea. However, could two men really have a lasting relationship? He was really eager to have a close relationship with someone in this world so he could feel that he also belonged in this world. Could this someone be LIAN? Diane Bai gnawed the bones loudly, the soup in the hot pot kept gurgling, the fire of the stove was swaying dazedly, and the heat from the charcoal brazier was so warm, but LIAN's heart was sinking gradually as if it was being drenched by ice and snow. It felt as though he was being stabbed. The hand with the wine cup retreated back, his lips were pressed tightly, his eyes were drooping and his black pupils abruptly dimmed. Mian had a full view of his changing expression and intense heartache suddenly erupted in heart, pounding his chest with sudden pain. He hastily picked up his wine cup, causing the half of the wine to drip. When he clunked it against LIAN's cup, a pleasant and crisp sound was heard. LIAN raised his eyes and met a pair of smiling clear eyes. It depends on your future performance. The despondent air surrounding LIAN's body instantly dissipated and the pleasant surprise in his eyes was so strong that it seemed to overflow. He took up the wine cup and drank it all in one gulp with a slight smile on the corners of his lips. Mian did not expect that he could have such a great influence on LIAN's mood. He sighed secretly, but at the same time, sweetness swelled in his chest, causing his face to unconsciously display a bright smile. If you don't start eating, the food will get cold. After taking a sip of wine, Mian picked up a piece of spare ribs and put it into LIAN's bowl. It was very natural, as if he had done it so many times. LIAN clipped a chicken drumstick from the chicken stewed with chestnuts and put it into Mian's bowl before he picked up the spare ribs to eat. The heat rolling in his chest did not disperse for a long time. His wife's cooking was too good. The spare ribs were crisp and soft that with only a light bite, the meat would easily separate from the bone. These dishes all have auspicious connotations, so every dish should be eaten equally. Mian gave him several dishes in proper sequence: tofu mixed with chopped scallop, chicken stewed with chestnuts, and braised pork balls in brown sauce. LIAN imitated him and helped him pick up the dishes. You also eat. Mian deliberately ate only 7 parts full at noon. At this time, he had a very good appetite. He loosened his belt and got engrossed in eating. Noticing the scorching gaze falling on him, he raised his head helplessly. What are you doing looking at me? Eat your food. LIAN put down his cup, grabbed Mian's waist while his right hand pressed on Mian's left face. He bowed his head and his hot lips pressed against Mian's lips. His bright and deep eyes were opened, looking straight at Mian, as if they could capture his soul. Mian's heartbeat slowed down a few beats. Nevertheless, he was not a pretentious person. He was only startled. Then, he leaned over and licked LIAN's lips curiously without the slightest idea on how to follow it up. He even felt a spiral of agitation and anticipation at the bottom of his heart. LIAN's black pupils darkened. He opened his lips and sucked in Mian's lips, deepening the kiss. The kiss was neither fast nor slow, but the temperature on the tip of his tongue was getting higher and his intent was getting stronger, as though he was trying to swallow Mian's tongue. Mian raised his head and cooperated clumsily. He could feel that LIAN had no experience, and he was secretly happy. The two of them groped around and learned as they go, their breathing gradually becoming rapid. It was a good while before the two separated. LIAN was fully satisfied. He pecked at the corner of Mian's lip before letting him go. He dared not look at Mian again as he said in a hoarse voice, "Eat." Mian glanced at the oil stains on the corners of LIAN's lips but did not remind him. He laughed silently and scooped out meatballs and tofu dregs balls into his own bowl. Looking at the wine cup, there was only half a cup of wine left in it. He picked up the wine jar to fill it up and toasted to LIAN. "Here, I'd like to raise a toast to you. I wish you'll have good health and may all go well with you this year." LIAN took a deep look at him and drank it all. Mian also finished the wine in one gulp. LIAN filled the 2 wine cups to the brim and raised them. Let's toast for the 2 of us. From hereafter, I'll make sure you are always smiling. Mian hooked LIAN's neck and kissed him hard on the face. Then, he clipped a large piece of meat from the fish's belly. After he proficiently picked out the bones from the meat, he enjoyed it with relish. All these dishes were delicious while eating it hot. LIAN was a little stunned. He shook his head and no longer talked. He also picked up his pace and occasionally helped Mian pick up the dishes. Both of them ate a large amount of food and it took nearly an hour before they put down their chopsticks. There were still a lot of dishes left. The food would not be easily spoiled in this cold weather, so it could be eaten the next day. So full. Mian sprawled on his chair, not wanting to move. He took a look at the sand clock on the cabinet. There were a shishan before the hour of sui. /Note, 1. Shishan is the 12-time period of the Chinese zodiac hour and each shishan is equivalent to 2 hours. 2. Hour of sui is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. LIAN went into the bedroom to take a cloak and fastened it on Mian. He pulled Mian up and led him outside. Where are we going? Mian did not understand. LIAN remained silent, leading him to walk back and forth on the snowfield with no hurry. Mian was worried for nothing. They were just walking around to aid with digestion. Dian Bai also followed them outside and looked at them inexplicably. As if it was disgusted with them for eating to the point of bursting, it squeezed through its exclusive hole in the wall to get back home. Mian stared at the hole in the wall, speechless. Were they being scorned? Scorned by a wolf? After walking for a long time, LIAN stroked Mian's chilled face and led him back to the house. Mian dragged the charcoal brazier to the edge of the settee and lay on the settee. LIAN took the leftovers into the kitchen and wiped the table clean. He came out of the kitchen after he washed the dishes. Go wash up. Mian entered the house after he brushed his teeth. LIAN had already poured the water for washing face and put the footbath basin aside. He also had taken 2 pairs of brand new cotton slippers from the bedroom. After the couple washed their faces, they poured hot water into the footbath basin. Mian took off his shoes and socks. He put his feet into the basin to soak, expelling the cold and improving blood circulation. LIAN moved a chair and put it opposite to Mian. He took off his shoes and socks and put his feet in the footbath basin. Mian's ears felt hot. He tried to keep his face from showing any signs of bashfulness. We've already kissed, what's the big deal about washing together? LIAN's eyes flashed a smile and his 2 big feet stepped on Mian's feet. Mian glared at him and moved his feet away, causing the water to slosh. LIAN's feet did not chase after Mian's but his eyes did not move away from Mian's face. Mian was also looking at LIAN. This man was really good looking. His handsome face was prominently angular like being carved by a blade. His forehead was broad, his eyebrows were thick, and his eye sockets were a little deep, making his black pupils more profound and bright. Under the tall bridge of his nose, his lips were also beautiful. The 2 thin lips made the rigidity on his face even stronger. Mian was glad that LIAN had a scar on his face. Otherwise, he did not know how many young maidens would adore him. As he thought about it, he could not help laughing. What are you laughing at? LIAN asked. Nothing. Of course, Mian would not tell him. End chapter. Minwei Nan. Chapter 68. Into the first lunar month. The heat of the water gradually dissipated. LIAN handed a blue foot towel to Mian and picked up his grey foot towel to wipe his own feet. After Mian went to the latrine to relieve himself, he washed his hands and came into the bedroom. He had asked Zhongji in advance about the various taboos on the first day of the first lunar month. On the first day of the first lunar month, he should avoid opening drawers and closets, so as not to let wealth and fortune slip away. He opened the wardrobe and picked out the new clothes, shoes, and socks that he and LIAN would wear the next day. LIAN locked the doors and windows before coming in. "Come, let's play wiki." Mian clapped his hands. They could not just sit there while staying up late on New Year's Eve. They had to find something to do to kill time. LIAN took out the wiki board and set it up. "You must let me put some pieces." Mian's level in wiki was just average, thus he said unceremoniously. LIAN nodded. In the beginning, Mian could still play very smoothly. After every cross-section was filled with pieces, he spent more and more time thinking. His sitting posture also changed from cross-legged to sitting diagonally, with the left arm resting on the short-legged table. His 2 legs stretched out with the 2 feet folded together, shaking. The appearance of his head down and frowning as he was thinking looked very charming. LIAN's eyes glanced at his bare feet. He reached out to hold one and gently kneaded it. Mian raised his head and took a glance at the man. He tried to take back his feet but was unsuccessful and let the man have his way. Once again, he thought for a moment where to drop his wiki stone. LIAN thoughtlessly picked up a white wiki piece and made a move. He looked back at Mian's foot. There was no flaw on his fair feet and the smooth nails glimmered smoothly under the light. His 5-toe bones held up obvious protuberances. It was still too thin that he could not help pinching it. Mian looked at the wiki board and acted as if nothing happened, while his face was getting warmer. What's so interesting about pinching a smelly foot? As the temperature in his palm rose, LIAN looked at Mian and found out that he was uncomfortable. He leaned close across the short-legged table, lowered his head, and pecked Mian on the cheek. The atmosphere was too ambiguous. Mian pushed his head aside and said with a deadpan expression, "Play wiki properly." LIAN pinched his foot again and let it go. Mian quickly retracted his feet. It was a long night. Mian could not endure it and yawned. LIAN put the wiki pieces back onto the wiki board and said, "Go to sleep." Mian shook his head, "I'm staying up with you." This was their first New Year's Eve. He did not want to leave a trace of regret. LIAN moved the short-legged table away, put his arms around Mian and wrapped both of them with a quilt. "Sleep. I'll wake you when it's time." "All right." Mian stroked his scarred cheek and drew his hand back into the quilt. He leaned against LIAN's chest, closed his eyes, and fell asleep in a daze. It was unknown how much time had passed when a cluster of firecrackers crackled outside. Diane Bai, which was sleeping soundly, jumped up suddenly. It looked around fully alert, shook its head and lay down again. Mian opened his sleepy eyes and asked vaguely, "Is it the hour of sui yet?" LIAN got up and wrapped him tightly in the quilt. "I'll set off firecrackers." Mian watched him go out. Soon, there was a deafening sound of firecrackers in the courtyard, crackling. It took a long time before it stopped. The village seemed to be awakened as bursts of firecrackers sounded one after another, from far or near. The intermittent sound of fireworks exploding from farther away could also be heard. Mian's sleepiness was blown away. He took off his thick clothes, yawned, crawled back to his old position and covered himself with the quilt. It took more than a quarter of a session for the village to regain its tranquility again. LIAN blew out the light, undressed, climbed up the heatable brick bed and fished out his wife into his embrace. Mian groped for LIAN's face in the dark, went closer and kissed him on the lips. "Happy New Year." After they talked about it, a lot of things were done naturally. LIAN clasped Mian's nape and deepened the kiss. "Happy New Year." "Good night." Mian adjusted his sleeping posture and closed his eyes. However, LIAN was not sleepy. He stroked his wife's back through his meager thin underclothes and sniffed at him. His wife's smell was more intense than ever before, making his body's temperature to turn into fiery hot. With one hand, he pressed his wife's waist close, allowing them to stick to each other intimately, while the other hand could not help reaching to the fleshy part of his wife's hips. The palm of his hand was suddenly grabbed, and at the same time, it was pinched hard. Mian said languidly, "I'm only 15 years old." LIAN's hand returned to Mian's waist. He sealed Mian's lips, sucking and kissing him fiercely. With much difficulty, he took a few deep breaths before gradually calming down and patted Mian's back. "Sleep." Mian put his arm on LIAN's waist, kept his body unmoving, and soon fell asleep. They had a good night's sleep throughout the night. When they got up in the morning, they put on new clothes. Mian also tied a red cloth strip around Dian Bai's neck. The leftovers were put inside the wok to heat up, and they went out together. The snow had stopped, but the accumulated snow had not melted at all. With every step of their foot echoed around, and there were overlapping and disordered footprints everywhere. The wind was even more prominently gloomy and cold. On the way, the villagers who were going to other villagers' homes to give New Year's greetings, whether they were in good terms or not, were all smiling and saying Happy New Year to each other. A young maiden of marriageable age hid behind her parents. Seeing Mian from afar, she secretly blushed as her heart beat rapidly. Inadvertently, she met LIAN's gaze, which was as sharp as a blade, and hurriedly lowered her head. In the old house of the Lei family, the younger generations were kowtowing to the elders as they paid them New Year's greeting. The happy laughter and cheerful voices were incessant. Lei Daqiang, Du Shi, and Wei Shi were all sitting in a dais. Lei Daqiang wore an olive green cotton padded jacket printed with the character Fu. Thanks to Wei Shi's care for him these days, his face was ruddy and his complexion was excellent. He looked 4 to 5 years younger than before. Du Shi wore a cloud bun on her head with a silver hairpin on the left and a golden dangling ornament on the right. She also dressed in a new robes. Her red cotton padded jacket matched with purple flower slit skirt, which made her face look very friendly. Wei Shi was the most eye-catching. She had a snake bun on her head decorated with dark green and bluish-green tassels. In between raising her hands and stamping her feet, the earrings embellished with precious stones clipped on her ears gently swayed subsequently. Her robes of light blue cheongsam perfectly outlined her beautiful waist matched with a bright red baizi. Her whole appearance looked charming. From time to time, Lei Daqiang took a look at her. After Mian and LIAN entered the door, everyone's eyes involuntarily fell on them. They secretly sucked in a breath at the appearance of these two handsome men. LIAN tied his hair with jasper hoops with his long black hair scattered behind his back. He wore a long indigo satin cotton padded robe and a wide red belt to express the New Year's joy. On the outside, he was covered in a black coat with a lock-stitch border of golden thread cloud patterns. The garment against his tall stature made him look majestic and extravagant. Although Mian was young, his figure was tall. He wore a cloud brocade cotton padded robe embroidered with white bamboo leaves. On his waist, there was also a red belt embellished with a bulging embroidered pouch. He wore a black cloak of thigh-length sewn with velvety white fox fur on the edge. His whole demeanor looked out of this world. As the son and the daughter-in-law, they kowtowed to Lei Daqiang, Du Shi, and Wei Shi. "Father, Mother, Xiaoniang, we wish you all a happy new year." Lei Daqiang was in a good mood. All right, get up quickly." Du Shi responded with an N in neither salty nor indifferent tone. Wei Shi invited Mian and LIAN to sit down and have tea, melon seeds, and fried peanuts. The Lei brothers and sister-in-laws came over with 3 children to wish them Happy New Year. The 3 mischievous kids knelt down on the ground, kowtowed, cheerfully grinned, and crisply yelled, "Happy New Year" to eldest uncle and eldest auntie. On the surface, Mian was smiling, but inside, his heart convulsed. He touched the heads of the 3 mischievous kids and put a red envelope for each of them in their pockets. Zhao Shi secretly opened her 2 sons' red envelopes and counted the money inside, which was 16 wen. She put them away with a smile. The average amount given to relatives' younger generation was 6 wen. Qin Mian and Lei Tie had money to open a shop, which in Zhao Shi's point of view meant that they were rich people. If they only gave 6 wen, she would have something to say. Qian Shi only secretly weighed Lei Xingxin's red envelope. Her pursed lips turned into a smile as she put it away. After sitting for a while, Qin Mian and Lei Tie got up and went to Lei Dagong's house. Lei Dagong had opinions towards Lei Daqiang but held no prejudice against Lei Daqiang's children. His wife treated Qin Mian and Lei Tie very warmly. Qin Mian gave each of their children a red envelope, which also contained 16 wen. After coming out of Lei Dagong's house, they continued to visit other elders and their peers' houses to give their New Year's greetings. The first place they went to was the village chief's house. Qin Mian was eloquent and had a good time talking with the village chief. The village chief's wife also praised him and Lei Tie for their good looks. After walking around the village, they returned home. They opened their courtyard door and put all kinds of snacks on the table, waiting for their fellow villagers and younger generations to visit their house for the new year. This was the tradition. As for whether people were willing to come or not, it could not be forced on them. Before long, a few little turnip heads in new clothes came in with cheerful laugh. The few of them all wore a small red ao, looking so happy. They were led by Xiaohu and Go Dan. /Note: Ao is a short and lined coat or robe / Uncle Lei, Uncle Qin, Happy New Year. Lei Tie nodded lightly. Qin Mian led them into the house with a smile and gave each of them a small red envelope, which contained 1 wen each. It was the custom of the village and only intended to be auspicious. He pointed to all kinds of snacks on the table. If you see anything you like, grab it yourself. The children's eyes lit up and started to drool. They ran to the table cheerfully, grabbed a handful of snacks, and stuffed them in their pockets. They did not even notice the small red envelopes in their pockets had fallen on the ground. Qin Mian amusingly took them to pick up the red envelopes and put them back in their pockets. Xiaohu was the most polite of the boys. He shouted "Thank you Uncle Qin" before he ran to grab the sweet kuazis. Every little child had their pockets filled up before leaving contentedly. The adults and children came to pay New Year's greetings one after another. Less than an hour later, when no one else came to visit, Qin Mian and Lei Tie had breakfast. The lively first day of the new year passed like this. The second day of the first lunar month was the day when a wife returned to her parents' home. Early in the morning, the sound of packing up things and berating children to not dirty their new clothes could be heard from several nearby households. Lei Tie looked at Qin Mian and was about to speak but said nothing in the end. Qin Mian was puzzled for a long time before he realized it. He then said to Lei Tie with a tight expression, "I really don't remember my parents." Lei Tie embraced Qin Mian's waist, bowed his head and kissed him on his lips. "Today, I'm going to pay New Year's greetings to my maternal grandparents. You stay at home. I'll take you there when the snow melts." Qin Mian was surprised. "Are your maternal grandparents still alive? It's the first time I've heard about it from you." Lei Tie was silent for a moment. "My maternal grandparents are alive. My maternal grandfather, grandmother, and second uncle are very kind to me. When I ran away from home, they secretly gave me 1 silver tael, and 2 silver taels when we split from the family." Qin Mian felt rather odd. "They didn't come to our housewarming." Lei Tie said, "My maternal grandparents live with eldest uncle. Eldest uncle didn't like me marrying a man and second aunt always felt that I'm a burden to second uncle." Qin Mian understood and stood up. "I'm going to prepare New Year's gifts for grandpa, grandma, and second uncle." He prepared generous New Year's gifts for Lei Tie's maternal grandparents. Fish balls, meatballs, lotus root balls, and tofu dregs balls were wrapped in 1 paper bag. Fried dough twists, sangzas and fried hemp leaves were hard for the elderly, but they tasted good when cooked with other dishes, so each was packed with some. Pheasant and hare that Lei Tie hunted were also wrapped for each of them separately. Moreover, there were also 2 kinds of soft snacks. All of these things filled a basket to the brim. The New Year's gifts to the second uncle were not meager either. It was composed of a packet of hot pot seasoning, a bag of tofu dregs balls, and a pheasant. All the way, LIAN watched Qin Mian wrap them all with oiled paper and his chest felt warm. 2 paternal aunts will come today. If they come in, you just entertain them and don't care about other things. Don't worry, I can't afford to lose. Qin Mian said, unconcerned. In this era, etiquette and reputation were highly valued, unless there was deep-seated hatred that could completely cut off the relationship between relatives. Otherwise, it was not good to speak out. Therefore, they would not cut off contact with Lei Xiaoyun's family but merely maintain cordiality on the outside would suffice. LIAN drove the ox cart out. Qin Mian stayed at home alone, snacking on melon seeds while reading a book. He did not feel bored. At noon, he took care of all the leftovers they had not finished on New Year's Day. He did not treat himself badly at all. LIAN hurriedly came back after lunch at his eldest uncle's home. End chapter. Minwei Qinan. Chapter 69. Maternal grandparents' home. In the afternoon, Lei Xiangren brought Lei Dabao and Lei Erbao over, and invited Qin Mian and LIAN to go to the old house for dinner as Lei Xiaoyun's family and Lei Xiaofeng's family had come. Lunch would be at Lei Dagong's house and dinner would be at Lei Daqiang's. LIAN refused. Lei Xiangren curled his lips and did not say anything more. He helped Lei Dabao and Lei Erbao to put fried dough twists and sweet kuazis from the dishes into their pockets, while he grabbed 2 pieces of sangzas before leaving in a hurry with his 2 children. On the 3rd day of the first month, Lei Daqiang and Lei Dagong went to Lei Xiaoyun's house to pay New Year's greetings. Qin Mian stayed at home, while LIAN went with them. After the New Year's gifts were delivered, he did not stay for a meal and returned alone. Upon seeing Qin Mian sitting in front of the table with the dishes and tableware waiting for him, and Dian Bai also looking at the direction of the gate, LIAN's heart felt extremely settled. On the 4th day of the first month, the Lei family went to Lei Xiaofeng's house to pay New Year's greetings. LIAN had lunch at Lei Xiaofeng's house. Lei Xiaoyun ranted and raved at LIAN but he kept silent. Lei Xiaoyun could do nothing about it. On the 6th day of the first month, LIAN reminded Qin Mian to add brine to the fermented tofu. Qin Mian sealed the earthen vessels after adding the brine. He solemnly put the 2 earthen vessels in a corner of the kitchen and wait for a year to open them. On the 7th day of the first month, the Lei relatives made an appointment to visit LIAN's home. Lei Dagong's, Lei Daqiang's, and Lei Xiaofeng's families all came. Lei Xiaoyun's family did not come, nor did she send New Year's gift. Qin Mian and LIAN did not care about it. After the 10th day of the first month, the custom of receiving guests basically ended, and the villagers began to invite the people they were on friendly terms to dinner. Qin Mian and LIAN also ran around for a day to invite the village chief with his family, Zhao Wenzong's family, Zhang Dashuan's family, eldest uncle Zhang and Wu did to have dinner at their home. The following day, Zhao Wenzhong, Zhang Dashuan, eldest uncle Zhang and Wu Di returned the hospitality. With these exchanges, the relationship between them had become closer. It was not strange to say that men's friendship came from the wine table. The weather was getting warmer, yet it was still very cold in the house. However, standing under the sun for a while could get one's body burning hot. On the 12th day of the first month, the accumulated snow had completely melted, the warm sun hung high in the sky and the ground was mostly dry. LIAN and Qin Mian prepared gifts and went to Deng's village to visit LIAN's maternal grandparents. LIAN drove the ox cart, while Qin Mian sat next to him eating melon seeds. Grandpa, Grandma, and second uncle are very good people, don't worry. LIAN suddenly popped out a sentence. LIAN did not mention his eldest uncle, eldest aunt, and second aunt. Qin Mian thought about it and knew what was going on. He put a melon seed kernel in his mouth. Do I look like I'm worried? Also, he was not really 15 years old. Lei Tie tightly held his hand and took a bite of his finger. Upon seeing that they were almost there, Qin Mian wiped his mouth, took out a bamboo cup to rinse his mouth, fixed his clothes and cleaned off the melon seed shells that had accidentally fallen on Lei Tie's clothes. At the entrance of Deng village, an old couple of about 60 years old stood under a tree while raising their heads and looking around, seemingly expecting something. The old man had grey hair and a grey beard but still looked very spirited. The old lady had a head full of silver hair, rosy complexion, and was slightly chubby. These two old people were exactly Old Master Deng and Old Madam Deng. Lei Tie saw them and said to Qin Mian, "That's Grandpa and Grandma." Qin Mian was slightly moved. "They must be here every day to wait for you. Otherwise, it's impossible to know that we're coming today." "They're really good people," said Lei Tie. The old couple also saw them, and a happy smile appeared on their wrinkled faces. The old lady even beckoned them to her side. Qin Mian could not help remembering his grandparents. "Grandpa, Grandma." Lei Tie jumped out of the cart, nimbly knelt down and kowtowed. Qin Mian did not hesitate to kneel beside him. "Happy New Year to Grandpa and Grandma." "It's fine, get up quickly. Don't dirty your clothes." Old Madam Deng lifted Qin Mian up and looked at him. Seeing that the child was neat and his eyes were bright, she immediately took a liking to him. She took out a red envelope from her sleeve pocket and put it into Qin Mian's hand. She said with a smile, "This is a little bit of Grandma's regard. Keep it." "Thank you, Grandma." Qin Mian had always been able to get along well with old people. He did not refuse the red envelope and put it into his bosom pocket in easy-mannered. Then, he held the old lady's arm and raised his eyebrow at Lei Tie with a smile. "I was given one but you don't. Quickly give a smile, maybe Grandma will give you a red envelope, too." Lei Tie looked at him helplessly and indulgently, still unable to smile. Upon seeing that Qin Mian was teasing Lei Tie deliberately, the old lady laughingly said, "I won't give him even if he smiles. He's an adult already. I'll give Grandma a smile on his behalf." With that, Qin Mian smiled at the old lady. The old lady was so happy that the wrinkles on her face deepened. "All right, Grandma will give you another red envelope." Qin Mian took it with a grin and passed it to Lei Tie. "Here, don't be angry with me." The old lady laughed even more happily. The old man put his hands behind his back as he watched with cold detachment. He had not acknowledged Qin Mian. Qin Mian did not care much about it. No one could make everyone like them. At this time, Dian Bai jumped out of the cart, walked to Qin Mian, rubbed against his leg and ran ahead. Qin Mian quickly called it, "Dian Bai, don't run around." Dian Bai looked back at him and ran back obediently. The old man stared at Dian Bai. A spark flashed in his eyes and he asked Qin Mian, "Is this a wolf?" Qin Mian was startled and said, "Grandpa doesn't have to worry. It's very clever and won't hurt people on its own initiative." The old man nodded and his expression softened. He said to Qin Mian, "Let's go home." Qin Mian was puzzled by his inconsistent attitude, but it was a good thing that the old man was willing to give him face. He supported the old lady to walk at the front and Lei Tie led the ox with the old man to walk at the rear. When the old lady asked Qin Mian how old he was and where he was from, Qin Mian answered truthfully. They went to eldest Uncle Deng's house first. Eldest Uncle Deng and his wife had 3 children. The eldest and the second were both daughters, and both were already married. The only son, Deng Chuan, was also married with 2 children, a boy and a girl. Both happened to have the character for good in their name. They were called Kun Tae and Zia. When they paid New Year's greetings to eldest uncle and eldest aunt appeared very warm but eldest uncle looked very cold. The 2 children came to kowtow to Qin Mian and Lei Tie. Qin Mian gave Kun Tae a red envelope of 16 wen and a small wooden sword and gave Zia a red envelope as well and a hair string. Lei Tie was careless. He failed to mention preparing gifts for the children before the new year. The wooden sword was what Mian asked him to make while he found the red hair string from the magical space. In fact, it was a shoelace from a pair of new shoes that he had not had time to wear. It was a mixture of blue, purple, red, and yellow threads. It was novel and unique, which could not be found in this era. The shoelaces were very long. Mian had divided the 2 shoelaces into 4 parts. In any case, no one knew that they were actually shoelaces aside from himself. Zia liked the hair string very much. She thanked him happily and urged her mother to tie it on her head into a bow knot. It looked very beautiful. After moving the gifts out of the cart, Mian and LIAN went to the second uncle's house. Second Uncle Deng was kinder than eldest Uncle Deng. While second aunt was polite to the point of alienation, she did not make things difficult for Mian and LIAN though. The couple had a daughter and 2 sons. The daughter was already married. The eldest son Deng Zhong had a son and a daughter. The youngest son Deng Xiao had a son and 2 daughters. Mian treated them all equally. The 5 children's gifts were the same as those of Kun Tae and Zia. The reaction of the 3 girls was almost the same as Zia's. They happily tied the hair string to their hair. Second Uncle Deng was a thoughtful man. As soon as he saw that the red envelopes and the gifts were given by Mian, he guessed that Mian was in charge of LIAN's household. He concluded that the 2 of them had a good relationship. He patted LIAN on the shoulder and said in a low voice, "No matter what is going on with you 2, live well henceforth and your mother can also be at ease in the afterworld." LIAN said, "He is my wife." His tone was flat but firm. Second Uncle Deng was stunned and sighed silently. He squeezed LIAN's shoulder hard, "You're an adult and have your own mind. Second Uncle only wishes that everything goes well with you." Mian sat across them at the table, seemingly drinking tea but was actually listening to them. He caught sight of a carrying pole and a small wooden rack in the corner. On the wooden rack hung wooden people, sewing kits, small embroidered pouches, and other small things. He asked, "Second Uncle, those are?" Second Uncle chuckled, "Did you Tiger not tell you? I'm a traitor." Mian's heart skipped a beat. He took a look at LIAN and said to Second Uncle Deng, "Have you tasted the fried hemp leaves, fried dough twist, and sangza sent by LIAN last time?" Second Uncle Deng nodded, "Yes, it tasted good. The children like them very much." Mian faintly smiled and said to LIAN, "We can give the recipes of fried dough twist, sangza, fried hemp leaves, and sweet gyoza to Second Uncle." Second Uncle Deng was startled and hurriedly said, "There's no need to." LIAN looked at Mian deeply, "It's up to you." Second Uncle Deng still had something to say but Mian interrupted him with a wave of his hand. "Second Uncle, don't refuse. We don't plan to make money with these snacks. At most, we usually make some for ourselves. These snacks are not complicated to make. They are very suitable to be sold from house to house. Moreover, the production cost is not high. Although Second Uncle won't make a big fortune, you can still make a small profit relying in its newness." This, Second Uncle Deng twisted his hands, still thinking that he did not deserve it. "How about this, after earning money, I'll share it with you." Mian smiled. Second Uncle had reached out a helping hand to LIAN. "LIAN and I remember it in our hearts. Is Second Uncle unwilling to give us a chance to repay you?" LIAN also said, "Second Uncle, don't refuse any more. My wife is very persuasive and I listen to him." Second Uncle Deng laughed in spite of himself. These 2 children. Mian returned the favor on behalf of LIAN, while LIAN praised Mian in front of him. Both did things for the other's sake. Speaking of it, if he refused, he would be regarded as an outsider. Thus, Second Uncle Deng nodded, "In this case, Second Uncle will shamelessly accept." Mian described the process of the snacks in detail, and second uncle Deng attentively committed them to memory. After sitting there for a while, Qin Mian and Lei Tie returned to eldest uncle Deng's house. Lunch was arranged at eldest uncle Deng's house. When second aunt learned that Qin Mian had given second uncle Deng a few recipes, she adopted a better impression of Qin Mian and Lei Tie. Lunch at the table was very peaceful, and there was nothing unpleasant about it. After lunch, the old lady pulled Qin Mian and Lei Tie to chatter endlessly. It turned out that in the first 2 years after the death of Lei Tie's biological mother, Deng Shi, old Master Deng, old Madam Deng, eldest uncle and second uncle were very concerned about Lei Tie. They would visit him every 2 months and send him some homemade clothes, shoes, and socks. But with Lei Xiongren's birth and Du Shi's instigation, Lei Daqiang's heart was more inclined towards Du Shi. At the same time, something happened in the Deng family. Eldest uncle Deng and second uncle Deng split up. Eldest uncle Deng was the eldest son, so the old parents followed him. On one side were the son and grandchildren, while the other side was the only grandson. Eldest aunt believed that the old lady was partial, and she said quite a lot of mocking words. Second aunt was not bad, but she was very stingy. She could not bear to see second uncle thinking of Lei Tie, and they always fought at home because of Lei Tie. These 3 reasons led to the complete neglect of young Lei Tie, who ultimately ran away from home. The old lady spoke about all of these in the hope that Qin Mian and Lei Tie would not hate them. Lei Tie shook his head to mean that he did not intend to. Qin Mian also did not think badly of the Deng family. Lei Tie was forced to run away from home, and the main culprits of that were his own father, Lei Daqiang, and Du Shi. Despite the kinship, the Deng family was the maternal grandparents' home. They were indeed not to blame. Now, Lei Tie had grown up smoothly and had a small family. There was no need to worry about some trivial things that happened in the past. Dinner was at second uncle's house, and second aunt was very enthusiastic. Qin Mian and Lei Tie knew that it had something to do with the recipes. After dinner, the sun had set. The two went home bathed in the sunset glow. Lei Tie had drunk wine a little too much and held Qin Mian's hand without letting go. Qin Mian worried that if he let the man drive the cart, the ox cart would run into the ditch, and so he drove the cart himself. Wife, Lei Tie leaned against Qin Mian's shoulder, and the puff of wine-smelling breath blew in his ear. I always remember the day I left home. End chapter.